Good day, everybody. Today we're going to be replacing the lower control arm bushings on the YXZ. Forgive me if I sound a little nasally. I took my Benadryl, but Mother Nature's sort of winning the battle today. Welcome to Restorooster OHV. So if you look at my lower control arm inner rear bushing, we've got the parking brake on. Now we'll just chock the wheels with the Yamaha approved wheel chocks. Get the front end jacked up and secured with the jack stand. Now this is a 2019 SSSE. This will pertain to any of the YXZs to date. You'll need a 19mm chrome socket to get this off, as there's not much clearance between the wheel and the lug nuts. Actually got a touch of inner tie rod in play as well, which I will address on another video. So while I'm in here, I'm going to take a look at my brakes, ball joints, CV boots. So what you're going to need is a 17mm wrench, a 19mm wrench, a 7/8 wrench, or 22mm I think is probably the same. Make sure they're different brands. It's important. You're gonna need a 17mm socket. I got a deep and a shallow. I've got it on a swivel so I can get to it with my impact gun. A pair of dikes, wire snips. I'm going to pull the cotter pin out on the lower ball joint, and I've also got a 10mm socket on my gun. I'm going to take off this boot protector so I just have better access. And we'll probably need something to separate this ball joint. You can use a fork for that, but that generally not a kitchen fork. Saw where you were going with that. But a ball joint splitting fork, but they generally damage the boot. So sometimes we can tap them a little bit with a hammer and get them to release. Next we'll be getting these bolts out. Inside bolts, and a nut is a 19mm, outside is a 17. Now we're probably going to have to drop this skid plate to get this bolt out, but we'll see if we can sneak it by. If you got one of those box end gear wrenches, that'd be a nice thing to use as well. If you forget which orientation these bolts go in, obviously you can always look at the other side. Put a little bit of lubricant on the threads, PB Blaster, WD-40, spit, whatever you got. And then you're going to want to use a 5mm hex bit or Allen wrench that will fit in the end of this. And it's a 17mm wrench to loosen it. Now remember to set your ratchet to tightening, and these sometimes can be a little tight. So since the skid plate actually goes up behind the front bumper and behind the winch, and I'm lazy, I'm going to notch this so I can get it out. I think I have enough play in the back one to slide the bolt out without doing any modifications. I'm going to use a cutoff wheel, but you can use whatever you got around. Ginsu knife, sawzall, hacksaw, your teeth, whatever works. Let's see if that gives me enough. I may be able to pry this in just a touch. Inspect the bolt for wear. Looks pretty good. It helps if you push the washer in. Makes it easier to slide it out. The bolt looks good as well. Now if these are stuck in there, you can certainly tap them out lightly with a hammer. Don't ever tap on the threads. Put your nut back on and lightly tap on it. And this is the fork I was talking about. I believe they call it a pickling fork. I'm not sure why, but that's what they call it. And a chisel gun or a hammer bit. A lot of times in the automotive industry we can tap the lower control arm right where the ball joint is and it will break free. Of course these are painted / powder coated. Don't want to damage it, so if you do go that route, protect your control arm. We're going to try that first. This fork will tend to damage the boot when you jam it in there. I've got our control arm out on the bench, easier to work on and much cooler in the shop. I went ahead and picked up this all balls kit 50-1168. This has enough bushings to do one control arm, upper or lower, on the YXZ every year up to 2022. I don't know about 2023s, but Yamahas don't really change things. So let's open this kit up and see what we got. I hope I got a new sticker in here. I'll be very disappointed if I don't. Man, they're slacking. Alright, so what it's going to come with is the 2 center pins. They're a metal bushing. They don't use any kind of bearings of any sort in here. And then seals. I mean, pretty straightforward, super simple. It's a tight fit, that's for sure. Let's take apart our old bushings. It's beautiful. Cracked, broken. Feels like, I guess it is metal. Feels like plastic. Could be plastic. I guess I have to put a magnet on it. We'll have to tap these out. Best thing to do is find yourself a socket. In this particular case, the 12mm is just a little bit smaller than the pin. You can test that by sliding it through one of the bushings. And we're just gonna tap these old pins out. Gallon. So the inner part of the bushing is still in there. They're pretty tight, so you can use a punch or a chisel, screwdriver, whatever you got, knock them out. So I'm going to take this control arm over, get it washed up real good, get all the dirt and grease off of it, then we'll come back and install our new bushing. We got the unit all clean as best we can, get everything out of here. I'm going to use some multi-purpose bearing grease, just lubricate the inside of these. Do the same thing with the new sleeves. I'm going to lube up our pins. Now don't panic that I'm not getting it all the way down, because we're going to grease these up once it's back in the car. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky, because when we tap this, it's very tight. We don't want to push the inner bushing back out. So I'm going to set mine against the table here. So she's seated. We can tap our outer bushing, which is a little bit looser. Make sure she's going in straight. There it is, one done. We're going to go and do the other one. Once we got that, we're going to put our seals on the outside. They just snap on. There you have it. Now we're ready to reinstall our control arm. After a light cleaning of the mounts, we're going to go ahead and reinstall our control arm. Now, they may be a little tight. You may have to tap them in a little. Lightly hitting on the lightest part. The front part is double braced, the back part is not. If you just give it a couple little taps, careful of your boot. Now, Yamaha probably recommends that you go ahead and replace these nuts when you do it. They're probably on back order for 60 million years, so if you want to ride your car, you're probably just going to have to go ahead and reuse them. You want to make sure they're snug, but the control arm is not binding. It'll be tight because it's new bushings. If I grab the wheel and move it back and forth, you can see I still have play in the inner tie rod end. That will be in an upcoming video. I'm going to go ahead and check the other side while I'm at it. I'm going to tighten your lugs in a cross pattern so that you don't warp anything. Well, let's see if our play from our control arm is gone. Tight like ham and cheese. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope something I did helped you out, made it easier for you to attempt to do it yourself. It's actually not a very difficult job, easy to do with basic hand tools. Always appreciate you guys watching. Also appreciate a subscription. Throw me a thumbs up, hit that bell, it'll tell you when my next video comes out. Thanks again, appreciate it.